Upon County, everyone. This is Professor Rahh, Professor Emeritus, California State University of Long Beach, along with Rahh Maskani, the host and producer of Community Education Network, along with Conscious Corner on his podcast, along with my co-host, Joe Hembrick. Joe Hembrick is a longtime educator for the Compton and Linwood Unified School District, administrator, coach, and a historian, a relentless and courageous study of our history and revealing it and discussing it to young people and to all, a prodigious reader and studier of Africa and ancient Africa, and a critique of the use of religion as a weapon to destroy the Black community. We also, as I said, I'm Professor Emeritus, California State University Africana Studies Department. Tonight is a very special night. It's the night people around the world are celebrating the birth of Martin Luther King. And we want to thank everyone who tuned in to join this roundtable discussion and the challenges that we face in the loss of him physically, but his spiritual struggle continued. So we're going to start off with just discussion, roundtable discussions. And you can, the beautiful thing about how Rashiki provides us a platform, you may not agree with what people's analysis is, but at the same time, we believe in unity with diversity, and we look for common ground. And we're going to start off with Brother Joe Hembrick. Brother Hembrick, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
What do you think about Kingdom Day and Martin Luther King? From a historical point, yeah.
Good day of service. We definitely need to be providing that for our people who are in need. I have to say he was the greatest orator of the 20th century, I believe. Just unfortunate that his life was taken early. I was studying some of the time before him, like with Reverend, escapes me right now, but he was the pastor of the church before King got there. He was a real radical minister. Vernon John, like I mentioned earlier, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar did a great film about Vernon John's life. I encourage everybody to try to look up and check it out. I think the greatest thing that King brought to the forefront was the boycott. I think could be instrumental right now if we would just unite and deal with it on a large scale. Excellent speaker, Nobel Prize winner after studying when I was in college. His letters and just wish he had got some of his examples from the motherland instead of India with Mahatma Gandhi and all that, because it was going on in Africa before then. Anyway, great contribution to African American society, and that's about it. All I want to say at this time.
Well, when you say a great orator, what do you mean?
Speaker. He could speak. I mean, that was his greatest asset to me, his ability to speak to crowds of people. He was great at that. That's what I.
And when you say the boycott was one of his major contributions, what do you mean by that?
Well, the boycott, with the bus boycott in Alabama, although it was really set up by some other folks, Brother Dixon and some others, King came in and they kind of already had that going from his, from a true perspective. But because of King's ability to speak and Brother Dixon wasn't that great of a speaker, they wanted King to be the mouthpiece in the forefront for the bus boycott in Montgomery.
Okay. So what about you, Rashiki? What do you think about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.?
I think he was one of the greatest intellectual thinkers of the 20th century. Um, in previous podcasts and on different occasions that you spoke about him, I learned that he was an excellent student. And anytime you are an excellent student, that means that you can learn a lot and then take that information and use it to do things that he did. It's just he's very extraordinary individual. I was listening to some of his commentary today, and he talked about agape love, and I thought that was he broke down love in 3 different ways, and I thought that was very exceptional. He mentioned love in the way you love your mate, and he mentioned another type of love, the love you have for your friends and your family, and then he said agape love is where you love your enemy, but you don't like what the enemy is doing, his behavior. So, and it takes a lot for a person. It takes a lot of courage for you to love someone that don't have your best interest at heart. And I think it's an understanding that a person that's like that, that's against you, with having no reason to really be against you besides dominating you and mistreating you. That takes a tremendous amount of courage. And I can't even say that I have adopted that philosophy of being able to love my enemy to the point where I could, just he courageous individual and all the accomplishments that he was able to afford, Black people, and like Brother Hembrick said, the boycott, the many marches that had impact on society. Just an excellent individual. He also the letter from Birmingham jail. It was very eloquent how he was able to convey the message of how to the clergy, and it's just extraordinary individual person to study and learn from. Uh, I'm gonna say this lastly: if people study King and take on some of his information and philosophies, it would make our world a better place, most definitely.
When you say that, like, what do you think was some of his philosophies that would make the world better?
Well, just to be able to convey to somebody that you know I you know I don't dislike you, but your behavior is something that I can't tolerate, and be able to you know just to to not meet physical force with physical force.
Mm-hmm.
That's extraordinary in itself, because when does it stop? When do we stop hitting each other? And it takes a bigger person to say, okay, look, I'm not going to do this. We have brains, we can reason. So it's just extraordinary lessons in his teachings. That's just
Mm-hmm.
one lesson.
Okay. Well, we got Linda Shorter that's joining us. Linda Shorter is a longtime activist in California, throughout California. She worked for the Long Beach Black newspaper. She was an entrepreneur. Her and her brother operated a Black bookstore in Long Beach. And she's a conscious sister that works for good health for Black people, as well as she's a historian with regards to a online museum about Black inventions and Black inventors that made life better for all people. So, Linda, are you there?
Oh, yes, I'm here. Good evening.
All right, so we were discussing what we thought about Martin Luther King Jr. and Martin Luther King Day, Kingdom Day. So do you have any comments? And are they doing anything in Florida?
Oh, yes, of course they're doing things in Florida because they had the Martin Luther King parade, the breakfast this morning, and then they had the parade this afternoon. And I know it's not as large as Atlanta, but at least people did do something. And I don't know what the whole original comment was, but my thing always with Dr. King, one of his famous quotes was, anyone could, about service, giving back. Where he said, all of us can be great because all of us can serve. So that's a philosophy that I always live by every day. And I try to even teach my child that we can always give back, no matter who you are, no matter whatever your age is, in some capacity.
Okay, so from that standpoint, are there any other philosophies or perspectives that you think that is noteworthy of Dr. King's contribution or your criticism of any of his movement?
The only criticism that I have of him, and I mean, I love Dr. King. He had many philosophies, and he went so many different directions, helping people to help themselves. But one of the only small criticism, which is huge, is messing around on his wife. Which because yes, he was married to Coretta, and I know he's a man, and he wasn't God, and he was a minister and all of that. But still, I think no matter who you are, if you're married, then you stay faithful to your wife, and the wife stay faithful to her husband, and y'all work y'all thing together. And no matter who come in your midst, you always be faithful to your wife or your spouse.
Where did you get that information that he cheated on his wife?
Okay, I shouldn't even say the word cheated, but just messed around with other women. And that's just things I've heard out through the ages. And it may be just what I've heard, but I've heard it too many times over and over and over, which is fine. And I mean, if it's true or untrue, it's not take anything away from him for what he did for helping out other people. And the only reason why I'm mentioning that is oftentimes our leaders, and are not so many leaders, you're married and you get this big head and stuff, and you get sidetracked by the flesh. And my thing is always, you honor your king and you honor your queen. If you're married, your spouses, you should be united as one.
Well, I understand your personal value, but you remember when the FBI supposedly threatened to send a tape of him in a room with a woman and asked him to commit suicide?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I mean, no, I don't.
Okay.
I remember they tried to set him up with a lot of things, and they probably did. And I think they probably did because that's who they are.
Yeah.
But it's still by no token, you still don't even, you had that thought and shake it off and keep moving forward. That's how you grow and get your strength, when you stay connected with that one source that you're united under God.
Yeah, I understand the virtues of marriage. I really do. And I think all the brothers on recognize that. I'm asking you, you remember the book that Ralph Abernathy wrote called the walls come tumbling down. And it
Yes,
was
I do.
about the civil rights with one page, or a couple pages that he talked about this woman that met King at the hotel.
Uh-huh.
That they went by the woman's house and they went to sleep. And when he woke up, he saw King coming out the room, but he didn't know coming out that room. But he was so drunk he can't remember anything else. Then second, when they got back to the hotel, this white woman was waiting and upset because King was supposed to meet with her and didn't. And King pushed her on the bed or something and told her to get away from him or something. But
Right, I forgot all about that. Thank you for reminding me, and I think that's why I picked up these little bits and pieces.
yeah, but Abernathy never saw him commit adultery or witness him being intimate with a woman. He just had some confrontations and
And
some,
he had assumptions.
yeah. And so again, the FBI wanted to deal with his character and deal with his tragic, demean him as a leader. But good, I'm glad you brought that point up. We'll come back to it. Brother Joe, you still there?
Yes, sir.
What are some of the critiques you have of the King movement
Well,
from a historian standpoint?
well, number one, with his name, that wasn't his real name. And then you go visit in Europe and you're going to read him and his father both renaming themselves after a Christian icon, Martin Luther. And your name, well, I believe it was Michael before that.
You're Michael Lewis, yeah.
Yeah, that's a little criticism. And
But then let me ask you this: why was that a problem?
well, I mean, like you say, brother, you know, slaves are named and free men name themselves. If you're gonna name yourself and you naming it after the enemy, I don't know how do you think about that?
Well, I don't think he renamed himself. I think his father did. His father took him on the trip,
He
and it was his father that changed his name, so he changed his son's name because he was a junior. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. But still, you asked me if I had any issues with it, and that's one of them.
The European name, going to a European Martin Luther in Europe church. Yeah. Okay. Any other one?
Just the whole thing of the integration movement, I had a problem with. Prior to that being, the forefront of the movement, how, you know, people of African descent, had their own things going, like we don't today. Businesses, companies, all that sort of stuff. Us being taught by our own people. When you get an integration, all the things that occurred with that. And then lastly, it's not a criticism of him, but really of us. I got a thing with, that whole Greek thing, which he was, I believe he was a Q dog. And from a lot of my studies about the Boule and all of that, and how he was kind of like a hand-picked brother for that organization to kind of keep reins on Black people.
Hembrick.
Yeah,
He was an alpha.
well, whichever one. But anyway, whole thing was to kind of keep us in check, under control, which led to a lot of the philosophical stuff that he promoted and believed in. And I I was really a fan of the other brother, Haj Malik El Shabazz, whose things that he spoke about are still hitting a nail on the head to this very day. So that and I'm waiting on him to get his much deserved recognition that we ought to be given. Instead of the powers that be allowing us to do something, we need to just, do that for ourselves. I know I got to call around and remind people about May the 19th when that comes around, because I think the brother really is worthy of it, and the things that he spoke way back then are resonating to this very day that we need to be getting with. So, they both sacrificed their lives for what they believe. And there it is. But that's my only criticism.
When you say the integration movement, what make you think the Martin Luther King civil rights movement was an immigration movement from a historical standpoint?
Well, what they was training people to do.
What were they training people to do?
Lunch counters and stores and all of. They were training them to do that. To go down there and suffer that kind of abuse at the hands of the enemy, like, let them, like this agape love, brother, Rahh talking about.
Well, I want to ask you a question, because I taught civil rights and law, and I know different human rights and civil liberties and civil rights. And a lot of people accuse Martin Luther King of being an integrationist, but he went to an all-black school. When he went to college, he went to Morehouse. He also, stayed in the Black community. He preaches at Black churches. And his struggle was not necessarily about integration, it was about having the right to go into a store without being forced to go to a back door. He was fighting against laws, segregation laws, as Rahh was saying. He wasn't fighting people. He was fighting institutional racism. Even the bus boycott was one against a law saying that Black people had to give up their seats if white people came in. They arrested Rosa Parks for that, and they arrested his sister before Rosa Parks behind that. My point is that a difference between integration and saying, hey, we pay taxes, we live in this country, and we shouldn't be restricted based upon segregation laws, because he lived the Black life for the most part. And I've yet to hear him. Now, don't get me wrong, integration did hurt us. I agree with you, but that was a choice people made. In other words, once they broke the laws of segregation, middle class people tried to move into white communities. Middle class business owners sold their businesses to go and live in an integrated life. But he never told them to do that. I mean, that was a choice for people. Even today, most cities are still segregated. But the point is, those were choices people made after he after he attacked the laws, the right to vote, the right to attend any college. Is that integration, or is that, hey, institutional racism and he was dealing with?
Well, I think one led into the other, so to speak. But I know all of the college students that were being trained, before they went down in the South to do what they were doing, and it was happening in the North also. But I guess I tie that in, to the, Booker T. Washington's time about, what we had going on then, compared to what the civil rights movement kind of moved us into. I stand corrected, but I always associated that with integration, with what they were doing.
Well, right now, there are many black people trying to move in white neighborhoods. They could, the middle class in Compton that had businesses and stores and homeowners, they sold them and moved out to, Ventura, moved out to the Inland Empire, and moved out to Merino Valleys, and moved out to Lake Elsinore, and where white folks were. I mean, I'm just saying what I saw, and from my studies, and that was their choice, and he wanted them to have a choice, but you have to choose to be black, choose to be African. I mean, you're American by habit. You want what they want, you eat what they eat, you emulate, and you name your kids after Europeans and all that, as you pointed out. But at the same time, your freedom was the freedom to be yourself and to free yourself so you could be yourself. But a lot of people didn't know themselves, and they saw themselves as Americans, and they wanted to be, the only black working, the only black in the neighborhood. I wanted nice things, nice, quiet neighborhood. I wanted to get away from living amongst black people with all the issues that they felt they had in the black community with regard to the lack of public service, good public service, the lack of infrastructure development and maintenance, the lack of just safety and a sense of their views. Is that correct? Or rescue me if I'm wrong.
Well, let me just say this. You talking about choose to be black and African. Out of all the speeches I ever heard him give and things he said, I never heard the word Africa or African come out of his mouth, not one time.
Well,
can you name me one?
Yeah, when you say you're black, you're saying you're African. African and black is synonymous.
And say
To me. He spoke against the concept of racial discrimination. And to me, our origin, anthropological origin, our anthropological origin is the continent of Africa. Regardless of if you want to call it Africa, named after European, Africanos, or Alkebulan, that Dr. Ben says is the correct name, or Ethiopia, as Chancellor Williams said, the 12 million square miles of land of the black, Egypt, face of the black. They try to say it's about the sand and all that. There's a discrepancy about of that as far as what black means. Black was a liberation term that Negro means black in Spanish, and some who were big enslaved a lot of black people from Spain, the Spaniards out of Europe, and they called them Negroes, and then the crazy whites, and Negra, and N-word. But that's anthropology. I see your point. I mean, you make a good point. I can't argue against your point about the specific term Africa. I have to research that and see if he mentioned Africa at all. But I'm pretty sure he did. Martin Luther King was an eloquent educator and conscious person to me, and I'm pretty sure that he talked about us being displaced from the continent here, as he said, America, in his critique of America. I'll research many of his speeches. I haven't respect all, and his autobiography on that subject. That's a good question you raised, and I'll look into that and raise it.
I had to read his book that he wrote for his doctorate dissertation, which I believe was called The Beloved Community, with all of that. And I can't recall that word being mentioned, although I wasn't as, all that conscious myself at that time. And and he's a victim. Everybody that goes to school in America usually, we're all victims of the same system. Like I said, when you want to get the truth, you got to go outside the box and get that on your own. And I don't know if he had access or knew about access, because when him and his dad went over to Europe, they didn't go to Africa, they went to Europe. So everybody gets it in their own time. It's a shame that his life was cut short before he could get to that point, or to those avenues, or to that research, as far as Africa is concerned, our Kibulan, whatever you want to call it. But I don't have no qualms about the brother. He gave his life, for what he believed and for his people. Like I said, I never heard those words come out of his mouth, and I'm still pushing for the other brother to receive the recognition that he justly deserves also. And which
Elhaj Malik Shabazz, I agree with you, but there are many schools in the East Coast and throughout Harlem, streets named after Malcolm. And even here, they're trying to get Malcolm X Boulevard along with Obama intersection. There's a movement of brothers trying to get that. They just want to name that add the name to that. And that's very critical from that standpoint. But at the same time, what did you think about the integration movement? And you had said that you thought it hurt us.
Well, in this sense that us being taught by our own people, when that first started, I know it was probably, because I kind of went through that myself, where all the teachers was white, and you probably did too. You first started school, even in Watson, Compton, most of them were white. But the sense of belonging, I know a lot of the first ones who went through that, I know they had some serious psychological issues about a sense of belonging, kind of busting those barriers down, like the little sisters in Arkansas and all of that. And I just know that in order to get the truth, you got to get folks, rest of them folks, they're kind of, I remember when I was at Compton High School, Black History, it was Negro History Week then. And although Compton wasn't integrated school, it was all black, except the teacher was white. And I asked this teacher I had, Mr. Sutton, I said, how come we only get a week? And he said, well, that's as long as your history is. It's just 1 week long. You know what I'm saying? So if we had that were in the know and really could have been schooling the kids, how much further could we have been along by this time? But it is what it is. It's a evolutionary thing, and even now, it's not to where it should be. Those that do, like us, we're kind of on the sideline now, and I wonder if the torch or the baton is being passed and it's being carried on from the stuff that we did. I don't see a whole lot of them out there doing it, but it could be.
What do you feel about the nonviolence movement?
Well, I was going to get to that when you was talking about people that were moving, trying to get to white nation. I think a lot of that had to do with gang activity, while a lot of people were getting out and getting their families and kids out, although the stuff followed them down where they went. You spoke about Moreno Valley and all of that, and how black people were moving out to those areas. I think a lot of that had to do with what was going on in the neighborhood, with all the murders and stuff that was going on.
Well,
Now,
but
go
see,
ahead.
in the South, there was a lot of lynchings and killings by whites of African people from Emmett Till on.
Yeah.
And many black people wouldn't move out the South. And a lot of people ask, why are you staying there? Now, they did have a number of black migrations out of Mississippi and parts of Louisiana, but at the same time, many of them are still there. You know, I wish Machinda was on so we could talk about that. You know, what made black people still stay in places where segregation and, and police are still killing black people, even in Moreno Valley, and even in Ventura, and even in Riverside, Temecula. A black sheriff just got killed the other day. But my point is that violence, as Malcolm and well, Al Malik Shabazz said, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King said, America is the biggest purveyor of violence in the world. They're the biggest, the number one that incarcerated, number one in violence. So wherever you move, and you always see people on TV talking about, oh, this never happened in our neighborhood. Oh, we thought we were safe, but, and then find out the guy next door killed his wife, his kids, and babies, and that they had to shoot out with the police, and this never happened. So violence is a part. Many of the militias come from suburbs, so the white suburbs. So, that's just a side note, but go ahead, Joe, with your position.
Oh, that was it. Actually, that's where I was born out there. So, uh, but at the time that I was there, wasn't even no sidewalks and whatnot in that area out there. But I remember, from coaching, and I had a lot of kids, and they would up and move. And, a lot of violence going on in the neighborhood. I know a lot of people were moving, trying to just, pay for their family. Because I know myself, the block I was on before I moved where I'm at now, and not to say I'm in the safest place, but it was getting to the point where, it was either going to be one of them or one of me when it come to my family. So I wanted to get my daughter out of there. And I didn't move. I'm still in the black neighborhood, but
Yeah, you committed class suicide. You could have been gone if you wanted to, but you chose to live in Clarkson, where it's predominantly black from a political and economic standpoint of middle class black people living in nice homes, but still close to Compton and Watts. And at the same time, it's called class suicide. Many of us, even Rashaki, live in the heart of or the Watts in Los Angeles area where there's a significant amount of black people. When you go out the house and drive down the street, you still see many black places that black people was there and things of this nature. But we committed suicide. We could have moved to Temecula and got or Riverside got a bigger house at a cheaper price, but we chose to pay the extra money to live close to our people where we were raised, and we feel comfortable and that we know how to live there. So that's a I recognize that. You chose this lifestyle. You could have sold off a lot of some of your property and moved if you wanted to. So that's a beautiful thing about you. You love your people. Rashiki, you have any response to nonviolent movement? Any critiques, perspective? I like your concept of him being knowledgeable and things of this nature.
Yeah, well, I just, as you and Brother Hembrick was speaking back and forth, I think that was very healthy conversation. We need more exchanges this way to get a greater understanding of things. As far as the nonviolent movement, I'm nonviolent because I ascribe to we could be reasonable people. If we sit down and reason with each other, I think we can be reasonable. I know that dealing in our society now that we're dealing with unreasonable people that's in power. Uh, Neely Fuller Jr. talks about being on code, and from listening to him, if we're able to be constructive people, and the thing, if we live a constructive life, we're automatically at war with white supremacy, racism. So the concept of nonviolent is for reasonable people, but we're dealing with unreasonable people. So I think we have to be more constructive and do things in a matter of fact. Brother Hembrick says this often. We have to change mentally, and I agree with him. We have to eliminate the value system of our oppressor, because we didn't took on our oppressor's personality. So it's just it's excellent commentary by you and Brother Hembrick and Sister Linda Shorter. And you know, with the infidelity, of course they want to paint Brother King with being something other than righteous. And I would go as far to say I don't think he could have been uh, unfaithful to his wife, but I don't think so. I don't think he had time to do that, but who knows? You know, I wasn't there. So it's just a wonderful human being. Now he was an example of a human being, and we don't have many of those walking around here today. You know, so just a excellent individual, deserving of a holiday, and Brother Malcolm, very deserving. You know, so excellent commentary.
But Linda, did you have any other comment?
No, not really, because I'm just enjoying this. The only
Okay.
comment I have, Dr. King did do a speech on reparations, and we were talking about about him saying black or African, and I got to go back and listen to that speech, but I'm sure he did.
Okay.
And I'm gonna pull it up on YouTube. It's about 4 or 5, and the reason why I remember, because they showed it yesterday in church, and I said, "Oh my goodness!"
Oh,
And it's, I think,
we need to see that, Sister Linda.
okay, yes, I think it's just called Dr. King's speech on reparations. It's on YouTube.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I'll pull it up again too, because if I find the point what you all were talking about, I'm gonna definitely send it to you.
Well, it's challenging to know that he got a doctorate in theology, and you know, he graduated. I mean, he went into college at 15, and then he did all the things that he did from an intellectual standpoint, not know that the geographical origin of the Black people in America was not from the continent of Africa, and that they were in the Holocaust of enslavement. From that standpoint, but people always talk about the nonviolent movement, but there was another dimension to the nonviolent movement. It was called civil disobedience. And you know, a lot of people say, well, King wasn't radical, but at the time that he and his movement was going on in the 50s and all the way up there to the time of his death, those were radical positions for Black people. Even the boycott was radical, as Joe said, for Black people to have a boycott that lasted, you know, over 300 days, you know, a year, you know, at that same time. Was amazing for a man that some people, well, you know, the boycott lasted 682 days. And then he, they say he traveled over 6 million miles, was arrested 20 times. His house was bombed 5 times. And then at the same time, the sister in New York stabbed him in the chest. And, you know, those dynamics that he went through with regards to assassination, character assassination, all the things that the FBI was doing to him, Edgar J. Hoover, the FBI, COINTELPRO, to attack his character and his individualism. But to me, during the period in which he was pushing nonviolence, he also was pushing civil disobedience and exposing and embarrassing America's brutality and inhumane treatment of African people in America, all the way up to the United Nations. And so many of that, people criticize in the nonviolent, they always focus on the nonviolent, which the European always say, but they don't focus on the civil disobedience, being arrested over 20 times, and then he was very critical of ministers who did not participate in the struggle. Even his last speech with Been to the Mountaintop, he noticed some ministers, he thanked them, but he also said there were ministers that just was concerned with themselves. And that a true minister have to care about the whole flock. And how could you be a good minister if you didn't care about how your people was treated and things of this nature? So, people, at that time of his era, he, when he was leading boycotts and leading the many demonstrations that he led, that was considered radicalism. They turned water hoses on him. He said, but that's not going to stop us. And you put dogs on him. He said, that ain't nothing going to turn us around. And then they want to say that he studied Gandhi. No, he took some of Gandhi's thing, but he was, Jesus was nonviolent, from that standpoint. And as a Christian minister, then he had 4 children, when you think about his children and Dexter, Martin Luther King III, Dexter, Yolanda, and Bernice, they all, they had conflict. They were suing each other over his papers and over his work and going through changes. One of them even became a Republican, the one that became a minister. And so, you look at that, but at the same time, they built monuments, the Martin Luther King Nonviolence Center in Atlanta, and things of this nature based upon his, and the beautiful thing about, say, if we would, as Brother Hembrick was alluding to, if we would employ not only his boycott movement, which he talked about at the mountaintop, the importance of us using our economic power to let them feel the hurt, that you can put hurt on them the way they hurting us by boycotting. But what if parents taught their kids to be nonviolent? Wouldn't that stop a lot of the violence in the community if you train them from birth? I grew up violent. I'm gonna be honest. I was in gangs. I was firing on people. I got a reputation for that. Just walk up and just hit somebody black, and because they were in the neighborhood. I apologize spiritually to all the people that I stole stuff from, that I took stuff from, that I did stuff to. I mean, I went through a transformation with Kawi's philosophy, but at the same time, if my parents didn't teach me the ethics of being black, the morality. And as King said, we were a moral vanguard. And, and it's hard to find the kids, I don't know if they did, that you mistreated, or the people that you broken homes and took stuff, or, and you just pray for forgiveness from a spiritual standpoint, if you're spiritual. But at the same time, that's the way we grew up in Watson, Compton, hardball city, And there were black teachers. I went to Markham, Mr. Excel Smith, Mr. Joe White, Mr. Davis was a PE teacher. Most of them were educated in the South, and this was 61, 62. And then when I came to Bunch Middle School, they had Mr. Adams, there was 2 Mr. Hills, there was Mr. Alfred, Miss Carey was the vice principal. This is 1962, 63. But there was still discrimination. Most of the principals were white, and the school board of Compton was white. and the majority of the schools were white. But at the same time, we were moving from Watts to Compton and Willowbrook area. So the point is that we all can look in the mirror and think about things we did that we wish we hadn't of. You know, and if it wasn't for basketball, I never would have went to college. But you know, I didn't follow King when I was coming up. I'm like just don't like white people. You know, they live on one side of the track, we live on the other. We go over there, we subject to the spook hunters and the various white gangs, and they came over here, they were subject to ours. You know, we you know, Jordan was all white, black, majority black. Markham was a majority black when I was going there. Bunch was majority black with Latinos. And then Centennial was built for black people. So I had a blessed black life as far as I was concerned, you know. And I learned from those experiences, and that's what motivated me to go through a transformation once I became a student of our history and our culture and our values. You change, you become more loving and caring of your people. And you realize that many of them suffer from oppression, psychoneurosis, as Queen Mother said. But Martin Luther King Jr. was not just a great orator, he was an educator. He educated people when he spoke. He educated them to struggle, that you had a duty to struggle. You had a responsibility to struggle. And he came up with a strategy because he knew, in my opinion, he knew that he was up against a well-armed militia that would shoot you down. So he had to come up, you know, that was his strategy. Now, other people had other strategies. You know, I've yet to hear him, you know, I mean, I hear him say, you know, we will not be violent and we would not. That was his strategy, but people still were violent. People still was, you know, to prove that was 1965 in the Watts Rebellion in New Jersey and Detroit and various cities, Chicago. Like all of them erupted, you know, even in the midst of, and that was because of El-Haj Malik assassination and other forms of brutality that was going on in the mid-60s. But that started the Black Power movement, you know, and they were marching against James Meredith got shot on a one-man march. He was marching to integrate University of Alabama by itself. He got shot. And then they came back and said, we're going to continue his march. And it's called the March Against Fear. And that's when Willie Ricks and at that time, Stokely Carmichael broke away from King because they were with SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. They changed and they started saying Black Power. And King was saying freedom now and you know, chanting freedom now. And they was to chanting no, Black Power. And Black Power is a whole different dimension as far as, you know, they was hijacking King nonviolent movement to one in which self-defense became a prominent aspect from Laurens County Panther movement, political movement, party movement, to the Black Panthers of defense. Black Panthers of that's what they call themselves, Black Panthers for defense, community defense. But anyway, the point is that Martin Luther King, as I said, was an educator. He was a mobilizer. People paid him, encouraged him to come to raise funds for their churches. When he came to town, mobilization was there because of the media attention he was getting. And then from education mobilization, he was an organizer. You know, he was a great organizer. He organized the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. He organized boycotts. He organized the masses of people and the strategy. And, you know, he went there and prepared to go to jail. And so we have to appreciate that sacrifice and his martyrdom. His martyrdom was not just his death. His martyrdom was his struggle for social justice for Black people to a certain degree in which he was targeted. by the system. His character was assassinated way before his physical assassination, but his character assassination didn't stop the people from appreciating his contribution, his recognition from that standpoint, because he confronted the system. He confronted the system in a nonviolent way, in demonstration way, and I didn't know it took that much nerve and spiritual power to be like that. You know, I just thought he was Uncle Tom, thought he was crazy. You know, let dogs be sick on you and let water hose be turned on you and you don't fight back. I mean, I couldn't handle it. But at the same time, I felt for the people that did do it. And I like the way he converted so many ministers, Reverend Shuttleworth, C.V. Vivens, you know, Ralph Abernathy, Reverend Lawson, you know, James Lawson, and I mean, James Farmer. All these were ministers. I can't even think his name. He was appointed by Carter. He's out of Atlanta, but he marched with King. He was there when he was shot. I can't even remember. Even Jesse Jackson got his start with King. And he talked about, you know, he had.
You're talking about Andrew Young. I think you're talking about
Andrew Young, yeah, Andrew Young. And all these people became ministers. Even John Lewis became a minister, using it as a tool and a weapon against oppression and against institutional racism, not people. You understand? Crime is crime. And when somebody kills you, it ain't a hate crime, it's murder. You understand? That may have been their motive, but it's still murder. It's a crime, it's a crime. And charge people with the crime. That's what they were arguing about. Any response to what I just said? Brother Joe? Rashaki?
Excellent commentary, Professor Rahh. Excellent.
Hey. Linda? Joe, go ahead.
No, that was commentary. Go ahead, Sister Shorty.
Oh, nothing. I was just agreeing. That was good. Good information.
Sister Short, I got a quick question of you though.
Yes.
You know, Professor Rob was talking about the bookstore thing in Long Beach and all that. You know the name Pam Ray?
Pam Ray?
Ray, R-A-Y.
No, I do not. Did they
friend,
go by another name, maybe?
she had a friend that had a bookstore in Long Beach, and I was at one of her affairs one time, and the keynote speaker didn't show up. It was Black History Month, and she asked me to speak, but her daughter kind of went to kindergarten through 8th grade with my daughter.
Mhm.
I was wondering if you were the first.
You know what year you said, because there was no other person had a bookstore by the name of Ray when we were living there. How long ago do you remember the year?
Well, my daughter's 20, will be 26 next month, so.
Oh yeah, that was after we probably had In Touch books and videos.
She had, this sister had a bookstore there that used to promote, and I can't remember the name, but it was a close friend of hers.
Right.
And if you get the name of the bookstore, please let me know, because I still have enough connections in Long Beach. I need to find out who had a bookstore after we left.
Oh, okay. I'll do that.
All right. All right. Any other issues? Well, I just want to say Happy Kingdom Day to everyone. And I think that we should take on some of his philosophies and perspectives and incorporate them in our lives. Especially, you know, I do both. I take the best of Malcolm and the movement thoughts as well as his, because his moral and ethical concept that we had a duty to struggle. We had a duty to make life better for others. And remember, his march on Washington was not to go there to talk about a dream. That was encouraged by Mahalia Jackson for him to put that on the end of the speech. He was there to talk about reparations, as Linda said, that we come to cash a check that was insufficient funds. That, you know, even this coach out of SC got his notes. I think they're at the Schoenberg Library. And the speech was not, I had a dream. That's what the European added to the end. And if you Google his speech, it's at the end of his speech because he was speaking and then Mahalia Jackson was behind him saying, tell him about the dream, Martin, tell him about the dream. And that's when he began to talk about the dream. But the dream, even he said his dream turned into a nightmare when it comes to the European treatment of African people and resistant toward, you know, he tried to appeal to the human nature of people. And there's a question if these people are really human or have the capacity to treat other humans like humans. They don't see it. They see it. Everyone that is not of their ethnicity or race as a threat to them in many ways. Now, it's not to say that some don't marry Black people and Black people don't marry them, but at the same time, and Martin Luther King did work with white groups, white churches and white socialists and things of this nature, but at the same time, to me, you can't be educated as much as he was educated and know the reality of our condition. And he just took alliances or coalitions with whomever would further his agenda of breaking the institutional racism and segregation laws throughout the South and North. All right, Rashaki, what we got going on Wednesday? And close us on out.
Okay, let me show everybody who we got. We got brother, I think Dr. Emoja, his niece. He's friends of Brother Hembrick and Professor Rahh. His niece is Dr. Ife Jai. She's a hip hop artist and a professor. So the topic is hip hop centricity and culturally sustaining pedagogy. So that's what we have Wednesday.
That's going to be interesting because a lot of people are trying to tie hip hop into a consciousness and a way of communicating to young people using hip hop. So let's see what she said. Been looking forward to that. All right. I want to thank Linda, Brother Joe, for their input. It was a good round table discussion. And Rashki, I'll call you tomorrow after I talk to Brother Hembrick about our next guest. All right.
Okay.
All right. Then.
Right. Excellent commentary this evening, people.
I think
Thanks
we're
for
going
coming
to
out.
I mean, Brother Joe mentioned this brother named Boo that we're trying to get to. They work with the homeless and work with the various ex-offenders. All right, then. Linda, it is always a pleasure for you to be on with us. You bring so much to the table, and we deeply appreciate.
Thank you for saying that. But I'm definitely still going to pull up that video. I'm going to send it to you all about Dr. King and reparations.
We can't wait until we get it.
All right. Thanks a lot, Linda and Brother Hembrick, Professor Rahh. So each one teach one. Go ahead, Sister Linda.
And I was going to say, everybody have a great week.
Okay, you do the same. So each one teach one. And Conscious Corner, everybody have a good evening.
All right, bro.